The maternal grandparents shared their yard with a very old neighbor, evangelical and completely out of her mind. A other day, his friend read the Bible and blasphemed outright against who knows who. We kept away from her, and only her grandmother greeted her out of politeness when she saw her calm and willing to socialize. I still seem to see her in front of me, hunchbacked and with a cloud of white hair on her head. She resembled a witch, and she also had a voice and the grotesque features of a gaunt, ruddy face. She had a grandson of my age, however, didn't always live with her. Sometimes he slept in the cellar, other times my grandmother said that he spent the night on the street with disreputable company, or at his distant mother's house. His mother was a prostitute, she was HIV-positive, and probably had a lover who supported her. Keep away from him, his mother has this kind of disease, so it is probable that he has it too, was the categorical warning made explicit only to make it understandable to the reader from my grandfather. Full of Christian fantasies pervaded by what I believed to be the fire of my priestly vocation, I wasn't at all willing to comply with the discrimination of grandparents, especially since with Mario, this is the boy's name, I played with him occasionally since I was a child, and then you could see that he was a good boy, that he felt alone and lonely, and that when he passed by there, he really wanted to have a chat with me. I never believed that they said what they said about him, that he was crazy like his grandmother, that he went around stealing or taking drugs, that he was a slacker, and that he would be lost like his mother. Mario was good and loved his mother very much. As a child, he liked to roll around in the dirt and didn't even articulate words well. Okay, but he never had the traits of a street hooligan, typical of Filippo. My parents were convinced that it was enough to touch Mario or to breathe his own air to become infected with AIDS. Besides, just because he's moderated, it was assumed that it had passed to him too. Mario's mother rarely showed up at the house of my grandmother's neighbor. The peasants of the area judged her, and she was undoubtedly ashamed, preferring to live as far as possible from that district. These stories of marginalization and hypocrisy attracted me, and subconsciously I felt a feeling of brotherhood for my fatherless friend. Unfortunately, with the growing wild of my personality and the thinning out of my summer stays with my grandmother, I never saw him again. His grandmother died, the property was sold, and Mario never showed up in those areas. Not even to sleep in his old cellar, now reduced to a ruin. My father was probably right in saying that I was possessed by the devil. After the age of 11, my fits of anger and outlets of unprecedented violence, even against living beings, there is often talk of children killing and torturing animals. It can be due to family problems, lack of affection, domestic abuse. Some scholars have even speculated that a child who takes pleasure in killing puppies of dogs and cats will turn from an adult into a ruthless serial killer. I too tortured animals like the children who do it. I don't worry too. The idea of starting a career as a killer maniac would even pass me by for fun. The world disgusts me too much to bother me so much. Furthermore, I for one didn't realize that they loved the suffering of the small defenseless beings whom I listened to yelp, whom I saw trembling, whom I made run away because of my perfidy. From my maternal grandmother I started burning a life of drawing small insects, especially ants. I meant when I stayed at my maternal grandmother's, I stayed by I started by burning alive of drawing small insects, especially ants. I imagined dramatic stories or heroic sagas in which the tiny little creature died tragically in fulfilling their destiny or a task wanted by the eternal God. I once enjoyed torturing a puppy dog owned by my grandmother's crazy neighbor. This kept him abandoned in a farmhouse and didn't even remember to bring him food. He was so cute that it seemed a pity that he was always alone, whining and shivering with hunger and cold. With the complicity of my grandmother, I brought him food and drink, and often on my own initiative, I freed him to run around in the grass wet with dew. How can we not resist the temptation to push him down into a ditch or to drown him into a barrel of rain water? I always stopped in time. I couldn't betray myself or shamelessly with my grandparents and show up at home with the news that I had killed my clandestine puppy. I can well say, however, that the poor animal trembled with terror at the mere hearing of my footsteps. Continuing in the next video. Thank you.